You go around the world and you find times and places where nations have excelled in one subject or another. There's a birth of that period of where they excel, and then there's a peak, and sometimes it drops off, and sometimes they hang on. And so you can ask the culture of that. What was going on in that nation to support those discoveries? And then what happened when they ended? And so I call that sort of naming rights. If you were there first and you did it best, you name things. Particle physics in this country, in the United States, was like going gangbusters after the Second World War. And the discovery of atomic elements, look at the periodic table. There's berkelium, californium, you know, we got half the United States up there in the upper, heavier elements of the periodic table. The periodic table of elements, it's color-coded. Now, what I'm going to do now is put the flag of the country that discovered each element. So let's check out what that looks like. Ooh. America is nowhere to be found up there because we weren't even a country when most of these elements were founded. But when we did become a country and Congress knew that physics, which specializes in matter, motion, and energy, might matter for war, particle accelerators were funded without limit. And it's out of these particle accelerators that we then take out the top end of the periodic table. That's where all of these came from. So we discover all these, so we get to name them. This is americium, named after America. This is californium. This is berkelium. Right? These are places where you have particle accelerators discovering elements. It's naming rights. Part of the naming rights is that you don't have to name it. So, for example, while we didn't invent the internet, we certainly exploited it here in America. We did that sort of first and best. And so your email address does not end in .us. Everybody else is in the world, they got to say what country they came from. We don't. Okay? It's simple, but it's the consequence of being there first and doing it better than anyone had done it before. Do you know that the British postage stamp is the only postage stamp in the world that does not identify the country of origin? Because they invented postage stamps. So why should they have to say what country it is? It's their invention. September 11, 2001, as we all know, this was going on in New York City. A few days after this, President Bush, in an attempt to distinguish we from they, who flew these planes into the buildings, to distinguish we from they, he loosely quotes a phrase out of the Bible by saying, "Our God is the God who named the stars." What he did not know is that of all stars that have names, 2/3 of them have Arabic star names, okay? Now, I don't think that's the point he wanted to make. The names are Arabic, all right? And the list just goes on and on and on and on. And so where does this come from? How does this happen? How do you get a culture where stars in the night sky are named by them? Because if you think of the Middle East now, and it's not where you're not saying, hey, these are folks naming stars. And you have to go back 1,000 years, and you get to the golden period of Islam, 800 to 1100. In that period, it's generally called the golden age of Islamic science. Golden age. There was no greater golden age in the history of the world before or after. When you look at the sum of advances that came out of that period in Baghdad, algebra was invented in that period. Algebra is itself an Arabic word. Algorithm is an Arabic word. All these words, they begin with AL. 10 to 1, it's an Arabic word. That 300-year period, the intellectual center of the world was Baghdad. It was completely open to all visitors, all travelers, Jews, Christians, and it was that period where you had the advances in, like, engineering and biology and medicine and mathematics. Mathematics took great leaps and bounds. Agriculture, navigation. Star maps were made to assist navigation. Astrolabes were crafted. The most expensive, beautifully carved astrolabes come out of this period. Our numerals are called what? Arabic numerals. They ever stop and think about that? You know, who, as in America, do we take pause at this? Why are they called Arabic numerals. We just call them that, right? But somebody did good stuff with these numerals. It was in Baghdad 1,000 years ago where they invented algebra. They fully exploit the discovery of the zero, create a whole field called algebra, itself an Arabic word. Algorithm is an Arabic word. Over that period, all these books were translated into Arabic on a scale not seen since then. All at a time when Europe was disemboweling heretics. Then it all stopped. It ended. The entire intellectual foundation of that enterprise collapsed, and it has not recovered since. It has not recovered. There is no attendant science going on there. It's done. It's gone. And it is a cost that exists to this day. There is 1.3 billion Muslims in the world today who are not participants on the frontier of scientific discovery. Take a look at the Nobel Prize from 1900 to 2010. Do this for the Jews, for example. How many Jews in the world? There's like 15 million tops. These are the numbers of Jews who have won the Nobel Prize in the sciences. 25% of the Nobel Prizes. This is rightly something to be extraordinarily proud of. The traditions of Jews in the 20th century is one of education and scholarship. In earlier centuries, it was one of very strict study of the Torah. Did not involve the natural world. This was a later emergence of the Jewish culture to exhibit this. How many Muslims in the world? 1.3 billion, which is huger, way huger than 15 million. How many Muslims have won the Nobel Prize in the sciences? And it's like 1, maybe 2. You to ratio these numbers, had Islam not collapsed in its intellectual standing in the year 1100, and you just do the ratios, they would have every single Nobel Prize today. So the fact that it's not only just a few, it's near zero, is deeply worrying. Jews have 50 times the number of Nobel Prizes. They're 1/80th of the population of the Muslims. It has 4,000 times the impact. I lose sleep every night with the question, how many secrets of the universe lay undiscovered? Because 1.3 billion people who in an ancestral time would have participated in this enterprise and are now not. I'm concerned about what lost, what brilliance may have expressed itself and did not in that community over the past 1,000 years. That's what I think of as a scientist. Whole populations. By the way, there are other populations that never contributed. I'm not going to them and blaming them. I'm talking about a population that already did contribute. It's in the cultural heritage already. All we're asking is to resurrect it. It has not happened. It has not come back at all. 1/5 of the population of the world is not a participant on the exploration frontier. What thoughts have gone undreamt of? There's an era where the scientist in the lab would say, the press is beneath me, they'll probably get my story wrong, I don't want to have anything to do with them, leave me alone. That happened only to the peril of the funding stream that went into those labs. And the first person to realize this in a big way was, in fact, Carl Sagan. He would start bringing science to the public. He did it sort of first and best. And colleagues said, what, you're on the Tonight Show? You're a scientist, and you'd stoop to go on the Tonight? And he was criticized for this, criticized. Meanwhile, the scientific community saw their budgets rise. And so in astrophysics, we learned earlier than in other fields the value, the general value of bringing the fruits of our research to the public.